Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining. This shooting is an extraordinary story. It's a big cable news and social media story. If you go to the major newspaper websites, there are other important stories happening today that are being covered more. Venezuela, Greenland, healthcare, Iran. There are a lot of big stories in the world right now. The reason we're going to focus on the shooting is because there's not another forum in America that I've been able to find like this right now since the shooting happened this morning. I have been deluged today with people who I respect and care about, who are very thoughtful people. Some of whom believe this woman was murdered, and some of whom believe that this was an act of domestic terrorism on the part of this woman. And that was instantaneous. And then people started watching video, and they still disagree. And I've watched videos all day. There's less video than I'd like, but there'll be more. We think there'll be some body cam video, perhaps. But what we've seen now is the damnedest thing I've seen in this category of story, which is you can watch all the videos and you can believe she was murdered, and you can watch all the videos and believe that she behaved in a provocative way, and the officer in the heat of the moment did something that an officer would do. You can have both those views. I have not found a single person who voted for Donald Trump who said she was murdered. I'm sure there's some in America, but I haven't found one. And I've not found a single person who really dislikes Donald Trump who thinks she wasn't murdered. So this is what two-way was made for, because this shouldn't be a red-blue issue. It's complicated, and I think really, I'll tell you, I'll spoiler alert. I think it's ambiguous here. If it is true, as it seems from the videos, and we're going to watch them all together in a moment, if it's true that she hit the officer with the car before he fired the first shot, even as he fired as she was fleeing, that to me is a pretty important fact if true. It doesn't mean that she should have been killed, but if the officers asked her to get out of the car and get out of the way, and when they asked her, she backed up the car, she accelerated forward quickly, and she hit him with the car. And one of the videos seems to suggest that's what occurred before he fired a shot. Imagine the situation he was in. He's in a dangerous situation in the sense that there's protesters and he doesn't know who does what, and a woman accelerates a car and hits her, and hits him. Now, could he have fired at something besides her head? He could have. Many of you have strong feelings about this. And again, I've been hearing from people with strong feelings and watching people with strong feelings on TV. The Secretary of Homeland Security has strong feelings. She said this was an act of domestic terrorism. The people who live in that neighborhood have strong feelings. We'll play some of the videos, but there are many we won't show. One of them is 6 minutes long. I tweeted it out. I recommend it to you. People are very upset that ICE agents were sent to their city. You could say the whole thing's Donald Trump's fault because he sent ICE agents to Minneapolis. You could say that. Some people have said that to me. You could say the whole thing is her fault because if you're in a law enforcement environment and a law enforcement official says to you, get out of the car, you get out of the car. Okay? She didn't. And instead, she slammed on the accelerator. So my goal in this hour, and we've got some great guests and we've got all of you, and I see some hands up already, and please put your hand up if you'd like to be in on the conversation. My goal is to have those of you who think this was a murder and that the ICE agents should be arrested and tried for murder, to understand that other people disagree with you, and that there's some video evidence that suggests it's more complicated for that. And my other goal is for those of you who think that this woman, it's unfortunate she's dead, but that she behaved in a provocative way and the officer was subject to domestic terrorism, for you to understand that some people think a woman in Minneapolis was murdered today by a law enforcement official, and again, to look at the video evidence, and to say, well, it is a little bit more confusing than that. And it certainly appears that if the officer could take it back, he would not have shot her in the head. Okay? So I don't want this to be an hour of screaming and yelling and people expressing disdain for those who disagree with them about this. And I'll just say, this, of course, in the context of what those of you who think she was murdered think, which is Donald Trump is sending jackbooted thugs from ICE to local communities who don't want them there. And this is the natural outcome. This is the predicted outcome, said today by both the mayor and the governor and Democratic members of Congress. Of course, this would happen. Of course, this would happen. Incredible it didn't happen sooner. And then the context for the rest of the Reds of you is the presidents of both parties let the border open. There are people in Minnesota who shouldn't be there because they're there illegally. They're providing all the negative impacts of illegal immigration. And ICE is there to restore order and to get the people out of who shouldn't be there. And people who want to protest and behave, not beyond peaceful protest, behave in a provocative manner. It's complicated for law enforcement. And that what was inevitable was that someone would behave in such a provocative way with law enforcement that law enforcement would have no choice but to protect themselves. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to do today. We have some great guests, some former elected officials with great understanding of complex, very gentle souls. So I'm confident that when we bring them in and we hear from them, we're gonna have a great conversation. We say here at Two Way, conversations like no other, and this will be, if I have anything to say about it, a conversation like no other. We're going to hear from all of you. I want you to hear I want to hear what you think about the incident, what you think about the broader context of ICE. The mayor today said he wants ICE out of the city. I don't get the sense ICE is coming out of the city. And if the Minnesota police try to arrest that ICE agent, I bet you Donald Trump will have something to say about it. So we have some tough moments coming, tougher even than we've already seen just in the few hours since this incident. But I want to hear what you think about the whole thing, and we're going to have a lot of questions, a lot of comments from you all, and answers from our three guests who will be here in a moment. Two former members of the House: Charlie Dent, Republican of Pennsylvania; Joe Cunningham, Democrat of South Carolina; and Norm Coleman, who was a mayor there in the Twin Cities and a former senator from Minnesota. Three very thoughtful people, and they'll be here in a moment. Now, many of you have watched the videos. We've done our best to cull the ones that we think are the most clear, and we'll show you some of them. This is the one I think that is most dispositive. Okay, number 4, please. If you haven't watched this one, please watch it closely. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm going to do my best to describe it here as it happens, so you can understand what we're all looking at and what we're using on basis. So freeze it right there, Kevin, if you would. Okay. So this is after the officers have approached the vehicle and they've asked her to get out of the vehicle, and she backs up and then she starts going forward. Now, you'll see 3 officers. The 2 closest to the vehicle are the most germane. One of them has asked her to get out. She's declined. The other officer is the officer who shoots. You see him obscured in the background. And I think the critical question for us here as we've watched these is, does he fire at her before he's hit by the car? Even then, that wouldn't mean, it wouldn't be dispositive that it's murder. But does he fire after he's hit? Because again, imagine from his point of view, they've asked her to get out. She hits the accelerator and she hits him. What's he supposed to do at that point? He's holding a gun. What's he supposed to do? Play the video, please. All right. Okay, now play number 2, please. This is a different angle, and it's the angle that's the clearest. As you see, again, it's a little bit from a distance, but it's the clearest angle that shows, without a doubt, that the car hits her. Or the car hits him, rather. Play it again. Again, there's no doubt. There's some angles people have seen. You can't tell that the car hits him. This angle makes it clear. The car does hit him, and it appears from the audio and the video that, again, he fires only after he's hit. Okay? Play number 6, please. Car backs up. This is in slow motion. Car backs up, and then it goes forward. Very close there in terms of the timing, but it appears that he is hit by the car speeding towards him. Okay? Now, there's lots of unanswered questions. There's reports of, do we have that last video available that's not on my list? Okay. There are reports that medical care was offered. Civilians wanted to help the woman. Hold on. Don't play yet. Civilians wanted to help her, and then a doctor, you'll see here, wants to help. And this is relatively not immediately after she was shot. Watch this exchange between the doctor and the ICE agents.
Go check a pulse.
No, back up now.
I'm a position.
Hey, listen, we understand. We got EMS coming. I get it. Just give us a second. We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How the do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the man?
Okay. So the chronology of post-shot until she gets to the hospital and is dead, that's a little it's still not clear what that chronology is. How much time elapsed, what happened during that time. But one part of this investigation will certainly be, did they do everything they could to save her life after she was shot? And clearly, even if it turns out that it wasn't murder, if they failed to let her get medical help that was being offered, that's not great. Okay, that's not great, to say the least. And of course, this happens in the city of George Floyd. It happens in the context of a community that's very blue that made it clear even before today's incident, they did not want ICE there. Okay, so we've got other videos we may show you. There's other little bits of news. If you didn't see the mayor's press conference, you certainly should. And we may come back and play some of that to you. But what I want to do now is bring in our guests. We've got a fourth guest now, another Minnesotan. I want to hear from all of them about what they think. And then we may come back to other videos, and other videos may come in during the time we're together. The Secretary of Homeland Security may speak while we're together. But what I want to do now is bring in our four guests, hear what they think, their overall view of the situation. And then we're just going to start bringing you all in, members of the community, and let you tell us what you think, ask questions if you wish, and then we'll have that conversation. We'll start with Mayor Coleman, Senator Coleman, who has been on Two Way before and is a great resident of the state and a calming presence in my experience in whatever he does. Senator, Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here. Great to see you.
Thank you, Mark. Shouldn't say it's a pleasure to be here. It's actually difficult to be here tonight. And I bring a couple of perspectives to this. I was mayor of St. Paul for 8 years. I was the chief prosecutor in Minnesota for about 17 years. And then also, I'm a dad, and I have sisters, and then, somebody's family member isn't coming home tonight. But I would just a couple of things. One, I would hope that for some of your listeners and viewers here, that they're not about waving the red flag, that she's a domestic terrorist, or the blue flag that she was murdered, but that they say that there's a process there that will figure all this out. And maybe let's catch our breath and let that process play itself out. You've kind of raised the question. Did the officer have a reasonable belief that he was in imminent threat of great bodily harm? And unfortunately, you've got a mayor that has already, he calls it bullshit and ICE get the F out. You have a governor that talks about this being a propaganda machine. If I can, from my mayor's perspective, I presided an incident, very, very different, but it was killing a police officer. But I can tell you my reaction. My thought process was, my job now is to bring the community together, to heal. There's grieving going on. And instead, what you have here is, rather than a mayor and a governor bringing the community together, you have them kind of continuing to light the fuse. I mean, I'm worried, Mark, that we're going to be here another night when something else is going to happen, because what they're doing is they're feeding the flame. So that's my frustration. There's a process that will figure out whether there was a reasonable belief of imminent belief of great bodily harm. But for these politicians to be kind of feeding the flame to, ICE, get the F out, it really, to me, it is terribly unsettling. It's not the way that I certainly would have acted, and it's not the way I think reasonable people should be acting in times of great difficulty. These are two leaders who presided over a city that got burnt down during their watch, during George Floyd. And now they're in charge again, and I worry that more bad things are going to happen because they're feeding the flame rather than trying to extinguish it.
Senator, thank you. I loved everything you said. I just want to clarify, though. Do you consider that the Secretary of Homeland Security saying domestic terrorism, when she doesn't know all the facts, to be any better than what the mayor and the governor did?
So I think what she's doing is she's protecting her offices, and I understand that. I would prefer that everybody kind of sit back. But then, that in that case, she's protecting the folks on the street. And by the way, ICE officers are not Gestapo. Okay, we got to kind of stop that. Again, that's what's feeding this. So I actually, I understand trying to protect officers. Put yourself in the position of the officer tonight, Mark. Okay, I mean, what he is going through. And no one talks about that at all. But so, yeah, she's doing what she does to protect her people. I get that. But in the end, I think most of us should sit back and say, let's see what happened here. Let the process play itself out. But don't feed the flames as both Walz and Fry are doing tonight.
Okay, before we bring in Congressman Cunningham and Congressman Weber, just to clarify, Senator, one more question to you. Wait for the facts, lower voices. Is it possible you believe that woman was murdered? Is that based on what you've seen? Is it possible?
I don't know.
But you don't.
Listen,
you can't rule it
I'll
out.
give you my reaction. It's not because it's a red flag I'm waving. It's clear the officer was struck by a vehicle at a certain point in time, and then he fired. Now, again, we'll have to go through. There may be angles I'm missing. But the one thing that is pretty clear is that, and by the way, it's not her intent. The driver is not important here, whether she was trying to get away, whether she was going home. If she accelerated a vehicle into an officer who then pulled out a gun because he believed there was an imminent threat of great bodily harm, then he's going to be acquitted. Then he's already perhaps not being charged.
Right.
But I'm not going to make that judgment, Mark. And I would hope that most of us in the end say, okay, let's lower the temperature. Let's lower the rhetoric. Let's lower the volume. Don't tell ICE to get the F out. They're not getting out. They are enforcing the law. They're not Gestapo. And I think we're putting their lives at risk. And again, I'm worried that more bad things are going to happen because the way this thing is playing out.
Okay, Senator, thank you. Joe Cunningham, former congressman, also an attorney from South Carolina. Congressman, Happy New Year to you. Welcome. Love to hear your thoughts on what the senator said, and in general, having looked at the video and thought about this situation, how you see it.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Mark. Enjoy your show, and always find it to be pretty reasonable and level-headed. So,
Thank you.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. What happened today, it's just an unspeakable loss of life. It's tragic. My heart, my sympathies are with the family of the deceased, of the woman who lost her life. It's heartbreaking to watch those videos, just from a pure human standpoint. And I think that's the first thing that needs to be said. A woman lost her life today, and it's always tragic. And I do agree with Norm that it should be a more level-headed approach. We don't know all the facts yet. I've seen, you showed a couple of angles. There'd be multiple more angles that come out. I mean, this, our opinions and our decisions can change based upon forthcoming evidence.
Yep.
Or different angles. I mean, that happens every Sunday with relatively a lot lower stakes on a football game or something like that. You see a play come in, you see it from a different angle. So unless, of course, you're cheering for your own team or you're blinded by partisanship, then you're going to continue to root for whatever side you want to, which is unfortunate that that's the state we're in. So, but to get to your point, I think the most important thing, I listened to some of Secretary Noem's remarks and some of the mayor's remarks, and personally, I found that, found them to be not having meet the moment. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Years ago, a racist walked into a black church and murdered 9 parishioners. These are inflection points, and we've seen it before in that city, that it calls upon solid, reasonable, and sensible leadership who will stand up and say that this is a tragedy. We have to wait for all the facts. We have to wait for all the evidence. Please give this process the time that it needs to play out. And for a community to heal as well. I mean, it's a very, very tender subject. It's a very tender location and state and city, but it calls for responsible leadership from the very top at the national level down to the most local level.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Dent is having technical issues, may join us in a bit, but we're lucky to have Ben Weber here, longtime congressman from Minnesota, and also a very bipartisan figure. Works with Democrats on a daily basis at the firm he's been at. And Congressman, grateful to see you, for you to be here. Happy New Year to you. Just again, comments on what your two colleagues have said and your thoughts. And I'll just start you off with this. Wouldn't it be great if the president and the governor could sit side by side and attend that woman's funeral? I doubt that'll happen. But what would you like to see going forward to resolve the level of tension?
Well, I think good to be with you again on two-way, Mark. I think it'd be interesting to have the governor and the president together at the funeral, except we've had enough violence.
Yeah.
I think that I agree with Joe and Norm pretty much. I think, first of all, I would say we should not even contemplate the notion, though, that the ICE agent murdered this woman. He may have acted inappropriately, he may have overreacted, but he's a law enforcement officer doing his job in a very dangerous setting. And murder is the wrong word to apply. I also think Secretary Noem is wrong in calling this domestic terrorism. Uh, I, that leads me, though, to I think reinforcing a point that Norm made. By the way, I'm in Minnesota now. I'm in northern Minnesota, but on Saturday, I'll be at our residence in Minneapolis, which is on Portland Avenue. It's north of where the killing occurred, but it's on Portland Avenue, and on a nice day, I could walk down there from my place. So I'm familiar with this. You have to understand that the electorate of Minneapolis, and Norm knows this very well, and St. Paul too, has been politicized so much in recent years by the leadership of the cities and the state to be reflexively against law enforcement. We saw that in the George Floyd situation. We saw it again, apparently, this morning. As horrible as this morning was, I'm really worried, and I expect that my friend Norm is too, about what's going to happen now that the sun's going down in Minnesota tonight.
Yeah.
Even though it's pretty cold here for the rest of the country, it's a relatively warm January day in Minnesota. And we could see a lot of violence tonight because these folks have been taught that ICE is the enemy, law enforcement is the enemy, and it wasn't always this way. Norm was a great mayor. He is a Republican, but his predecessors as mayor of St. Paul, or Democrats as predecessors of Mayor Fry in Minneapolis, people like Don Fraser and George Latimer would not have acted this way. And they are liberal Democrats. We have a different type of Democrat running our cities now, and they have convinced the electorate that this kind of activity on behalf of the population is not only appropriate, it's required. And that scares me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, three. I'm mindful of the time. Secretary Noem is, for the second time today, addressing the shooting. We're going to monitor it. We're not going to take it live. We'll monitor it. As soon as there's a clip to play, we'll play to give you a sense of what her tone is. Going to bring in one more person, a member of our community, because I'm eager to hear what she thinks. Maureen is here. Maureen O'Connell, former FBI agent, member of our community, and always grateful to have her on complicated days like this. Maureen, I want to just tee you up by asking you this. The mayor made a point today of saying there's been no coordination between federal ICE agents and the local law enforcement, and that played some role in what happened, and now he's asking them to leave. What is your point of view in looking at the videos of the position that the ICE agent who shot was in?
Well, I think it's going to end up being a justifiable shooting without question. The agent was actually struck by the car and is in the hospital right now. So, I mean, there's no doubt that that's what she was trying to do. For people to say for 1 second that we haven't seen in, right before our eyes, numerous times, vehicles crashing into large amounts of people in unsuspecting places, it does happen. And it's something that we as law enforcement are taught that we need to stop. Also, for him to just jump out of the way, look at the street seemed relatively clear there, but as you know, it's cold and there's snow all on the sides, like from where the cars park all the way up onto the sidewalk. And for someone that grew up in that environment, and I also spent a lot of time in Wisconsin, you can't just run and jump around like you could on the streets of LA to get out of the way, nor should you. She was given a lawful order. She chose not to abide by that lawful order. And she chose instead to hit the gas, strike a law enforcement officer, and continue on. One other thing to think of is if I'm in that position, or if any of us are in that position, and we're looking at the situation unfolding before us, and she starts coming toward me, I don't have the time to look to see, is anyone behind me? Is there a mom and her kid behind me? Are there other protesters that are behind me that might get struck once she strikes me? So, he did what he had to do. He made that decision very quickly. I'm sure it's not a decision he really wanted to make, but he felt he had to. And here we are. Had she abided by that lawful order, and to go back to the first part of your question, Mark, where you said, what about cooperation? They've tried to cooperate with the mayor and with the governor, and they're just like, screw you and everything else. all these detainers, many, many, many times in my career, I would show up at the courthouse when someone had a hearing on another thing, or I'd show up to the jail and I'd say, hey, we've got a detainer on this guy. We need to pull him out. And this is why. And then it's a very peaceful transfer. So many of these things are self-inflicted wounds. And I also think that the mayor and the governor are both thrilled because it's taking them out from under the microscope of all the fraud that's going on in that state. And he's trying to make ICE look like the people that are victimizing the Minnesotans when really, this fraud has just been making all these hardworking Midwestern people cough up all their money to these fraudsters.
Okay. Maureen, again, brilliantly said. For the point of view you haven't heard anybody explain it better than that. So thank you. Let's bring folks in. Again, questions for Senator Coleman, Congressman Weber, Maureen. Unfortunately, Joe had to go. So we may be joined by others, but here we go. Alan, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are. We'd love to know, again, question or comment about what's occurred and how you're feeling about it.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I'm Alan C. from Tallahassee, Florida. Appreciate the opportunity. I didn't expect to be called on first, so got a little caught off guard. But I just what happened was a tragedy. No one deserves to be shot for defying the police. No one deserves to be killed. However, when you defy a lawful order, you aim your wheels at the police officer and hit the gas. The cops got to react because that's a deadly weapon. So, Maureen, you're 100% on point. What I'm very concerned about is when there's a tragedy that might implicate a left-leaning cause, or like when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, everyone was like, oh, we need to take our time and get our facts together and find out what's going on. I didn't like that immediately the mayor, the governor, and Ilhan Omar were immediately labeling ICE as murderers and just throwing that label. And at the same time, the domestic terrorism is an overreach. I just think it's ridiculous to politicize this without having a body cam footage. There's probably other footage going on, and everyone's just making snap judgments just to get people in their emotions and not thinking logically. So that's my observation. That's all I want to share with the community tonight. And thank you for having me.
Okay, Alan, thank you. Senator.
I just wanted to add, by the way, about the coordination issue.
Yeah.
And that is, these are sanctuary cities. This is a sanctuary state. The police in Minneapolis are told not to cooperate with ICE, told not to assist ICE. And so when the governor was talking about somehow they're not cooperating, it's because you've given orders, both at the state level and the city level, not to cooperate with federal authorities, which, by the way, is another example of kind of exacerbating the danger. And rather than quieting things down, these folks have stoked the fires, they've stoked the flames, and unfortunately, terrible consequences we've seen today.
Yeah. Vin Weber.
But just to add to that, it's important people understand in the context of Minneapolis politics, Mayor Fry, and I agree with most of the criticisms that is put his way, he is the moderate element in Minnesota politics.
Yeah.
The Minneapolis City Council organized itself this week, and a majority were organizing a council to the left in opposition to Fry. So the politics of this city is hostile to law enforcement, hostile to law and order, and conditioned to just create and magnify problems under these circumstances.
Here is a video from an eyewitness who says, and you'll see it's a very level-headed person, so the prosecutor might attach some credibility to this, that the woman in question, whose name the mother did an interview at the local Minneapolis paper and said the name of the person. Here's what she says. She says that the woman was there as a protester. She was not some innocent bystander. Play that, please.
Clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
That was her goal.
Okay. Ryan, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for about all of this.
Hey, Mark. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on. As somebody out in California who is not, I haven't experienced ICE personally, but um, it just seems as if ICE has a mandate that is completely different than many other law enforcement agencies. I've seen countless videos of ICE officers running into vehicles to stop them, just to add to what Christy Gnomes said in her statement about protesters going after ICE officers and taking out their vehicles. I've seen the exact opposite. I've also seen ICE officers break through windows to get into vehicles. It's we're obviously in a very polarizing time. I agree with Vin's take with respect to the, I can see where the officer, for a moment, yeah, I could see that potentially his life was threatened, having a vehicle somewhat come at you. But to have our president and our leader of Homeland Security not just like we're saying about Mayor Fry and about Governor Walz, that they're just blatantly standing behind this officer without at least saying, okay, he's going to be placed on administrative leave, paid administrative leave, and we're going to look at this situation. Instead, this woman is labeled a domestic terrorist who meant to hit this person. She deliberately went around him even after she was shot the first time.
You mean before she struck him?
Okay. I look.
So she ran right into him.
I get that he might need to be hospitalized for minor injuries, but to say that officer was meant like that, she blatantly wanted to take him out. All I'm saying is that it was a gray situation. That's all I'm saying is a gray situation, and on both sides, this is being politicized heavily. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. Congressman Dent is back. Congressman, thank you. If you could unmute, if you could respond to what Ryan said, and in that context, tell us your overall view of what we're dealing with now, please.
Well, I've been a little bit out of the news cycle today in terms of what just happened with the shooting. But my general sense on this whole matter has been that I've always supported ICE. I've always supported the 287G program, allowing ICE, local authorities, local law enforcement authorities, and state local law enforcement authorities to cooperate with ICE. But I do think that enforcement has to be done much better than it is. I mean, we've always set priorities for terrorists, criminals, the worst of the worst, getting them out of the country. I am concerned when I see ICE agents showing up at chicken processing facilities, going after people who are just working, frankly, or going to a skilled nursing facility and going after the person changing the bedpans.
Yeah,
and that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, a lot of people on both sides do overly politicize this issue. I mean, you hear the left saying, "Oh, abolish ICE." Well, that's ridiculous. And others on the right who, say they want to remove every last person in the country illegally. Well, that's completely absurd as well. And we got to get to balance here, and we're just not there. And Frank, I don't think the administration's helping anything with their, excessive rhetoric. And I'm hearing it from a number of people around the country about how it's affecting employment, frankly, and our ability to actually perform certain types of work activity. We just don't have enough people to work, and that's where we are today in this country.
Yeah. Thank you, Congressman. Jim, if you could unmute at Ryan, thank you. Jim, tell folks where you are and what's on your mind for the group after you unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, about some of the actions of ICE that Ryan evidently objects to, I would respectfully point out that it ought not surprise anyone that ICE uses conventional law enforcement actions and tactics to apprehend those that they believe are lawbreakers. About this case, I would say when you insert yourself into a law enforcement operation, you're asking for trouble. When you act in a way that causes law enforcement officers to order you out of your vehicle you've escalated it. When you cause them to draw their guns, you've crossed a more obvious, dangerous line. And finally, when you attempt to flee, and it should be noted that fleeing doesn't mean you deserve to die, but when you attempt to flee with a law enforcement officer in front of your vehicle in plain view, causing him to move out of the way, or hitting him, the sum total of all your actions have caused your death. To me, none of this appears to be conjecture or speculation, but rather a fact pattern. And having said that, I need to add this. Now, God forbid this had been my wife or my daughter. I would not feel this way. I know I would not. But that wouldn't be a dispassionate view of this incident, which is the only way tragic events like this ought to be evaluated.
Thank you, Jim. Senator.
Yeah, I was going to say I really appreciate, Jim, your kind of rational, in many ways dispassionate kind of analysis of what happened here. Again, bottom line, it's not important, by the way, what she was thinking, whether she was trying to get out of the way. If she acted in a way that caused the officer to reasonably have fear of imminent fear of great bodily harm, then his actions are justified. And so, the sad story here is that actions have consequences. And you're right, Jim, you laid it out. She put herself in a situation where good things were not going to happen and may have acted in a way that in the end caused her death. And so on, as Vince said, there's no murder going on here. The question was, did the officer have a reasonable belief of an imminent fear of great bodily harm? That's what this is all about. So, Jim, you have analyzed it, and you're right. I started out by saying I'm a dad, I'm a brother, I've got sisters. And so it's tough to be dispassionate in those terms, but authorities are supposed to be dispassionate. Okay, and the job of the mayor and the job of the governor should be to heal and should be to pull people together. And you're not seeing that in Minneapolis today. You're not seeing that in Minnesota today. Vince articulated a lot of the reasons why. That there isn't any more mainstream in politics in Minnesota today. And so I just want to say, Jim, I applaud your kind of analytical, dispassionate recitation of the facts. And I think it comes to a conclusion that in the end, if the officer had that reasonable fear, then he did what he was supposed to do, what he was trained to do.
Jim, thank you. Okay, Wendy's a member of our community who lives in Minnesota, and we're going to get to her in a minute. I want to play for you Secretary Noem from just a moment ago, talking about her view of the incident and her claim that the officer had dealt with a previous incident where he was dragged by a protester. Play the second bite, please.
I want to start out by addressing the loss of life that we saw here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
Okay, play the second one, please.
The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. I encourage the American people at this point in time to pray for him, but also to pray for the deceased's family and her loved ones. Today alone in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well.
Wendy, hold on one second. Maureen, I want to ask you a question because I'm seeing a lot of this from people who have a different point of view than you do about it, which is we don't know which shot killed her, and perhaps we won't, but maybe we will. What's the point of the officer firing at her again after the car had passed him and was speeding away? What's the point of that shot?
Because you have no idea what her intention was. First of all, for her to block traffic of law enforcement officers with their sirens on, there's obviously something wrong, probably with her. She's not behaving rationally. Could she then take her car and roll? You know, if first of all, most of the time in the overwhelming number of officer-involved shootings, they can't even tell you how many times they fire their weapon. Oftentimes, they fire it until it empties the magazine. And when asked, they actually have no idea. They'll say, "I think I fired 3 rounds." Turns out, well, you fired 9. Because when you're in the heat of the moment, once you make that decision, it's just something that's happened. And this goes back to the beginning of time, all the way, other countries, not just America. It's a phenomenon that happens everywhere. But you have to, you're going to shoot at someone until they stop moving forward, because you don't know what they're doing or what they're about to do. You have to what we call neutralize the threat.
Okay, thank you for that. Wendy, thank you for being here. Your thoughts on what's happened in your state today.
Well, I wanted to add something, and Christy Noem touched on it too. The first gentleman said he was praying for the gal's family, which we are as well. But also, I'm praying for the officer's family. What that officer's family is going to go through now is going to be hell. We come from a law enforcement family. And what officers go through in these situations and the pressure put on their families by the press, by the leftist machine, politicians, leftist politicians, etc., is almost unbearable. So I pray for both families. As far as I'm concerned, listening to the rhetoric coming out from Walz and Mayor Fry for the last several weeks about ICE, about immigrants, about all of that kind of stuff, from calling them Nazis to encouraging people to go out and protest, encouraging people to be in that situation. I feel very sorry for that lady. She was encouraged by her party to be out there and to be trying to keep ICE from doing their job. She shouldn't have been there. It's tragic what happened. I don't think she meant to run over him. I don't think he meant to kill her. I think they both, just my own opinion, watching all the videos from all angles, I think they both acted out of fear. She was trying to get away. He was trying to defend himself and his others. Again, we have to wait for that to play out. But I do want to say this, that with the rhetoric that came out of the mayor and the governor today, if Minneapolis burns again, it's at their feet. They are encouraging these people to come out. They're saying, "Oh, come out peacefully." We know what that means. The bad actors get in the middle of it, and then they stand there and they're just going to blame Trump and ICE. It's, if Minneapolis burns, Walz's rhetoric and Fry's rhetoric, it's at their feet.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
I appreciate that. And I want Congressman Weber and Congressman Dent to respond to you. I will say, I don't even need to look at the chat to know what people on the left are going to say about that, which is Donald Trump said, go to the Capitol Hill 5 years ago and protest peacefully. And people don't credit that. They both did emphasize they want peaceful protests. They said it repeatedly. It seemed heartfelt to me. So I don't know that it's fair to say They were indifferent to that. I'll also say, because I do glance at the chat, I don't read it. Those of you who say this is a one-sided conversation, raise your hand and tell us your side. I know people, as said earlier, I know people who believe that gentleman committed murder, and I know serious people who say it. And Wendy, you're absolutely right that ICE agent, that ICE officer, is going to be dealing with people like you calling him a murderer for the rest of his life, unfortunately. Vin Weber.
Well, it's certainly everybody has a right to go out and protest. We're not going to deny that, but elected officials should not feel compelled to tell them to go out and protest. The better advice under these circumstances is go home, stay home where it's safe, take care of your families. I worry. I've said this before. I'm worried about what's going to happen in Minneapolis tonight. And it's the environment has been created that says lawlessness under these circumstances is not only justified, but in the minds of many people is required, and that's not good.
Charlie
I
Dent.
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say about this, because I haven't seen video. All I know is what I've been hearing from people on both sides. But this is a time where people need to take a step back. There's a tragedy that happened today. A woman was killed. Okay, and before we rush to judgment, whether the officer was in the right or in the wrong, let us at least conduct an investigation, for Pete's sake, and figure out exactly what happened. I remember after Ferguson, Missouri, when Michael Brown was killed by a police officer, and they said he had his hands up, don't shoot. Well, we found out later that really didn't happen, and then we saw a video of the individual Brown, the young man who was killed. Sad that he was killed, but he was robbing a store. The police officer didn't know that at the time, and so, but at the moment, or in the moment, we rushed to judgment, and I simply don't know all the facts. I wasn't there. I heard the Secretary of Homeland Security. There are people on the other side contradicting her. Let's conduct investigations, and that's the problem in this country right now. We are immediately politicizing what is a tragedy, and before we pass judgment on this officer or in this case the victim, the woman, let's get the facts, because we simply don't know them right now at whatever time it is, 6:30 or 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night.
Congressman, thank you. Senator, let me ask you a question, then Ellen's going to come in as a former prosecutor and a lawyer. If Minneapolis, either state or county or whatever the jurisdiction is, asked to interview him, if you were his lawyer, would you let him do that interview?
No.
No.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I was a prosecutor, but
yeah.
as a prosecutor,
yeah.
I'd love to have interview, but I've got to presume that most defense lawyers are going to say, you don't have to say anything. And again, particularly in this case where there is video, there are lots of angles that show that this woman accelerating a vehicle, hitting an officer, and the officer then, assuming the video shows, then firing after he was struck. Then I think, as a defense lawyer, I'd say that we were at pretty good standing to believe that there was a reasonable belief of an imminent fear of great bodily harm.
Yes. Ellen, tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind.
Hi. I'm in Scottsdale. And actually, I had a question for Maureen. This whole, from the beginning, the ICE arrests and raids have been very divisive. And I was wondering, is there a less divisive way to approach this? Is there someone that, what is that? And that's what we should be doing, right?
Yep. Great question. We've all heard the saying, teamwork makes the dream work. And that's exactly that's how we operated forever until, it just became this divisive thing. The very first instance where, and Mark, that was the first time I was on your show, the very first raid where people came out and they were saying that these ICE officers just ran into this factory on Alameda. I was just on Alameda today, coming back from the courthouse, ran into this and just started clearing it out and clearing it. That wasn't the case at all. They had 121 count indictment against a group of individuals that were laundering money. money laundering in Los Angeles down in the garment district is a big deal. It's been a big deal for many decades. And so that's exactly what was happened. And that sparked all of this. And everyone was saying, they're just going and ripping people off their working stations and dragging them out. And from that point forward, this is where we are. What used to happen, to your point or to your question, is we would go into the jail and we would say, "Hey, we just looked, we ran these guys through the indices or records or whatever, and we see that 14 of the guys I'm looking for that I have warrants for, they're in your facility. Can you just turn them over to us? We'd like to come and pick them up on Tuesday," or something along those lines. Then we show up and we take them into custody and we transfer them. They're obviously unarmed because they're in custody. They're already handcuffed, which is great. Then we put our handcuffs on them. They take their handcuffs off. We put them in the back of our car, and we take them over to the federal lockup. No harm, no foul. No one is harmed. There's none of these super dangerous situations. So when we see, and a couple of the people have talked about how ICE looks like they're operating with a different set of tactics, it's because they're rolling solo on everything. I would also like to bring up one important point about today. Today, I'd like to see, I bet those ICE officers called for local police to come and help them. And that mayor and the governor have been very clear that they're not allowed to. Had they just showed up to handle the situation as a civil matter, get people out of the way, help these guys out, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that isn't happening? Like just getting the people that are already in jail versus like here in Arizona, ICE likes to hang out in front of the courts and scoop them up when people are going to attend the court hearings. And that upsets people. So is there a reason why they aren't just like going to jails?
They're told not to. All law enforcement is being told in all these sanctuary cities and states that you are not to cooperate with federal law enforcement. All that does is it just puts all the citizens at risk and also all the law enforcement
But
officers,
even in the non-sanctuary city,
no,
like
sanctuary
here, Phoenix
cities.
is not a sanctuary city.
That's where they've gone mostly. Ellen, thank you. Ben, just a point of information, because it's your neighborhood extended. What is that area like? The video makes it seem like it's a pretty hardcore suburban area. Is it, how far from the center of town is it?
Yeah, it's about, well, we are right in the center of town, and it's about 20 blocks south of us. It's a residential neighborhood. It's not a ghetto or anything like that. But I think it's more working class residential, not upper class or anything like that. If you go a little bit west of there, you get into much wealthier neighborhoods. You go a little bit east of there, you get into poorer neighborhoods. But it's a very middle class, working class area.
Right. Okay. Ray Marcano, my friend, is here, charter member of our community, happens to be an Ohio-based journalist and columnist. Ray, hard to see you in the darkness of Ohio, but please let us know what you think about all this.
Yeah, I'm in the car. And a quick comment, quick question. The quick comment is I am extraordinarily disappointed in everybody that looks at that video and then makes a determination on what that officer was thinking, what that driver was thinking. We have no idea what either one of them were thinking. We have no idea what their motivation was. And I wish people would just chill out. And that leads actually to my question. And that is, who is going to lead through this difficult time? It's not DHS, it's not Fry, it's not Walsh. And if we don't have a strong leader, then this thing could be a problem.
All right, I nominate Vin Weber and Norm Coleman, but
gentlemen, we're friends, Mark.
Yeah, gentlemen, Ray, thank you. The governor, and again, the timing of this couldn't be worse because 24 hours ago he was at war with the president and blames the president for his political troubles, and said he was going to devote the rest of his term to fighting the president. So he's probably not a great candidate either. The president's not a great candidate. Can you all think of anybody in the state? Keith Ellison, not a great candidate. What about your two United States senators? I saw one of them on TV earlier tonight, and she seemed like not a great candidate for that. Is there clergy, business leaders?
Yes, I don't think the politicians are going to lead. You have, by the way, a U.S. attorney who's just appointed. And by the way, the U.S. attorney who's leading the charge on the anti-fraud stuff, on the $9 billion fraud, is a very. I think he served under Biden. He served under Democrats, Republicans, very well respected. So there are a couple of law enforcement agencies that really do have some measure of respect. I mean, the sad problem is the state of leadership. The governor is a failed governor. The governor, he's worried about his own, his political situation is gone. He's roadkill politically right now. But, he's worried about, was his malfeasance, was it to extend where it's misfeasance, where in fact he's criminally liable for the fraud that's going on. So you're not going to get leadership from him. You're not going to get leadership from the mayor, even though, as Vin correctly noted, the mayor is a conservative Democrat, relatively speaking, from Minneapolis terms. And there's an all progressive city council. St. Paul has an all progressive city council. So, but in the end, there are some law enforcement agencies. And by the way, the FBI. And I think the FBI is well respected in Minnesota today. Under the leadership it has. And so I think there's some law enforcement agencies that could be involved in this that could at least get us to the point that a number of folks here have articulated is let's kind of see, let's see what the facts show. And let's determine whether, in fact, the legal standard that needs to be met has been met. And if so, then those are the cards, and you play with the cards that you've been dealt. But I do think there are some law enforcement agencies that have some credibility. Vin, I'll yield to you on this one.
Vin.
Well, no, I agree with all that. And if I don't want to sound too high-minded about this, but Minneapolis also has a lot of serious religious leaders in the community. This area of Minneapolis is very near Mount Olivet and Central Lutheran, two of the largest Lutheran churches in America. They're not far from St. Olaf and the Basilica of St. Mary's, two major Catholic churches. The leaders of those churches and others are significantly involved in their communities. I know some of them. I've listened to them occasionally. I would hope that they would be able to find a way to become involved in this process, because I know all of them are much more moderating in their attitude and non-political.
Can I ask a question of Norm?
Yes, please.
I follow a guy named Blois Olson. Are you familiar with him?
Sure, I know Blois. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, he seems to be right down the middle on everything, and he will not, even if you try to interview him, he will not tell you what side he's on. I think that might be
He's on the Democrat side, but he's pretty much
yeah.
He used to be a Democrat activist.
But I think Ray, you hit it. That's Vin's point again. Democrats that we consider in the old days really liberals. They are seen as conservatives today.
I know,
or at least
the realm of where the Democrat Party is. But no, he's on the D side. But listen,
but I do agree with Maurice. He's a good guy. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying he's an identifiable Democrat.
I'm just saying he's someone that can we it's at least move toward the middle a little bit?
Yes.
Hey, Mark, can I make a point on something that Maureen made an interesting comment about these sanctuary cities. And this comment predates Donald Trump, but I remember in my district back in the day, where I lived in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, I would talk to my local law enforcement personnel and I would ask them, when you do a traffic stop, do you check immigration status? And they said, yes, we do. They check for warrants. They check to make sure your license is valid. They check all kinds of things. These sanctuary cities, and again, this is not a Trump, this is long before Trump. These sanctuary cities basically prohibit their law enforcement agencies from cooperating with ICE. Now, last I checked, the federal government doesn't have a police department. Interior enforcement of our immigration laws cannot be successful without the assistance of local law enforcement. ICE can't do it on their own. I'm not here to defend what ICE is doing in all these cases where they're going after people who are not criminals who are just going to work every day and meeting vital needs for our communities. But I'm just talking about this is a problem in our country, and I guess I'm not as familiar with obviously Vin and Norm about Minneapolis and Minnesota, but these communities like that are simply making life difficult for everyone because they've taken this very absurd ideological position that really makes no sense at all. And throughout much of America, we were able to do more sensible interior enforcement just simply because there's a cooperative relationship between law enforcement and ICE.
Right.
That's
I see.
a great
Yeah,
point.
yeah. I see somebody put in the chat asking why they're even legal, and it's an interesting question. And of course, most of these cities don't want to take responsibility for the negative implications for their own constituents of being a sanctuary city. Timothy, we just have a minute left, so if you can be quick, we'd love to get your comment or question in.
So I lived in Minnesota for 8 years. I lived in Edina, St. Louis Park, and Chanhassen. I was Congressman Paulson's district. I actually met him back when I lived there. And so my question is more political because my family left during in the aftermath of the George Floyd riots and COVID and moved to Florida. And the Minnesota Republican Party has really failed at winning can. I mean, they haven't won an election since I think Governor Paulini in 2006. And I know Senator Coleman's daughter-in-law is a rising star over there. But what does the future for the Minnesota Republican Party look like? Obviously, if Senator Klobuchar runs, it's going to be an uphill battle this cycle. But just in general, and other statewide races that you have coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, if you guys,
Mark, could I
Yes.
say that I
Yes.
was the last Republican to get more than 50% of the vote? That was in 2002.
Yeah.
Plenty got reelected without less than. So I'm the last Republican. That was 24 years ago that happened. And by the way, with the fraud that's gone on in Minnesota, the Democrats were in danger of losing the governor's race, losing the Senate race. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, is also implicated in a lot of this fraud, and that hasn't been played out. And so I think the political environment in Minnesota is one in which the Republican Party may have some opportunities. But you're right, Amy Klobuchar is she has good following in Minnesota, and if she's a candidate, it's going to be very, very difficult for Republicans to do anything. But certainly this moment, with the expense of fraud that's happened under Tim Walz, under Keith Ellison, certainly creates some opportunity for the Minnesota Republican Party.
Yeah, Norm is right about all that. I would make one additional point. The Minnesota electorate is very close to 50-50. It's not overwhelmingly Democrat, like Massachusetts or someplace like that. Organizationally and structurally, the Democrats have it all over us. They've got a well-organized, well-led state party. Ken Martin may not be doing a great job at the DNC, but he did a great job as state chairman in Minnesota. And the Republicans have not been well organized for a long, long time. If you could write that structural disembodiment, if you will, Republicans are very competitive. We may win this time for all the reasons Norm cited, but they got to solve this structural imbalance between the two parties if they're going to be truly competitive.
Yeah, Timothy, thank you. We are at time. Very grateful to Congressman Dent, Congressman Weber, Maureen, Senator Coleman, and Congressman Cunningham, who was with us earlier. Grateful to all of you for being part of the community. We'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow morning meeting. We'll be talking about this and some other stuff as well. So please join us then. And again, conversations like no other. I guarantee you there hadn't been too many, maybe none, conversations like this in America today. So honored to be part of it and grateful to you all for being part of it. And again, thanks to all of you who joined as guests and who raised your hands. Have a good evening, everybody. We hope to have you all back and grateful for you making time. Happy New Year.
Thanks.